and welcome back to the BCR Dawson sub. This is the first in a series of videos to share with you how I have modeled the locomotives and rolling stock seen on the layout. These videos will review the prototype equipment seen on the railway during the 1970s and my efforts to model it in N-scale. Where possible, I will also offer comments with respect to HO scale options for the cars. We will start with the 40-foot boxcars owned and operated by the British Columbia Railway. Most of these were inherited from its predecessor, the Pacific Great Eastern Railway, but several series were acquired second-hand during the 1970s. We will start with the 4001 to 4075 series cars, which were built for the PGE by Canadian Car and Foundry in December of 1947. These were the first steel boxcars for the railway, and they served until 1986. They were built to the 1937 AAR modified design with 10-panel riveted sides, improved dreadnought ends, and a rectangular panel roof. The interior height was 10'6", and they were equipped with 6-foot Youngstown sliding doors. During the 1970s, they could be seen in various schemes, including the original MAP logogram, the revised MAP logogram, and the BCR dogwood. These cars were used primarily in grain service during the 1970s and 1980s. Intermountain offered the 1937 AAR modified boxcar in N scale and also in HO scale, and it's a near exact match for these cars. In N scale, they were offered ready to run in the PGE MAP scheme at one point. For cars in the MAP scheme or the later BCR dogwood scheme, the running board should be removed and the ladders on the AR corner lowered. Unfortunately, the running boards have large plastic pins extending through the roof of the car, and these need to be filled in. This is an in-progress photograph with two of my cars, and it shows the running boards that have been removed and the holes in the roofs have been filled with styrene. And on the brown car, you can see that the ladders at the AR corner have been cut down and lowered. My models are finished with acrylic paints, which are custom mixed by my friend Jeff Briggs. I then apply custom decals, which are prepared for me by my friend Philippe White. Here are PGE 4015 and BCOL 4049 during the decaling process. And here are my completed models of 5 cars from this series. The 2 cars in the original MAP scheme are factory paint and lettering from Intermountain. The revised MAP and dogwood logogram cars are custom painted and decaled. The next series of cars to be purchased by the Pacific Great Eastern was the 4101 to 4300 series, built by National Steel Car in 1958. They had 10-panel riveted sides, NSC 3 ends and roof, and 8-foot Youngstown sliding doors. Again, the interior height was 10'6". During the 1970s, these cars could be seen in the original stacked Pacific Great Eastern scheme, the large PGE initial scheme, the original and revised MAP logogram schemes, and the BCR dogwood scheme. By the 1970s, these cars were also used mostly for grain service. The last cars in this series served until 1996. The National Steel Car boxcar is very similar to a Pullman standard boxcar, and in N-scale, the closest model for these cars is a Pullman standard boxcar available from Microtrains, and also more recently from Atlas. These models have the correct ends and roof, but the sides are welded rather than riveted. The Microtrains cars have 7.5-foot doors, but the undecorated Atlas car comes with an 8-foot door option. In HO scale, this car was offered by H&D Distributing under their brand name Trains Canada, which included versions in the stacked and MAP schemes ready to run. One could also convert a Pullman standard car, as I did in N-scale. My 8 models representing this series are among my first custom models in N-scale and were built from Microtrains undecorated kits many years ago now. I removed the running boards from cars in the older scheme and filled the holes in the roofs. The models were finished with custom flocal paint mixes and CDS dry transfers. The various schemes included the stacked Pacific Great Eastern, the original MAP logogram, and the BCR dogwood logogram. If the Atlas car is issued again, I would likely use it to replace these models, as it is a little closer with the 8-foot doors. The 8000 to 8011 series cars were insulated and heater-equipped cars built by Dominion Steel in 1961. Their construction included NSC-3 ends, a diagonal panel roof, and 8-foot Youngstown plugs doors. An alcohol-fired heater and fuel tank were located under the car on the right side. Photographs from the 1970s show these cars in the stacked, original map and BCR dogwood schemes. These were used for the delivery of food and beverage products to the north, and the last cars were withdrawn in 1990, replaced largely by the railway's fleet of heated and refrigerated trailers. I modeled 3 cars from this series using the Microtrain's PS1 40-foot plug door boxcar. It has the correct ends and doors, but the sides are welded rather than riveted, and the roof is incorrect. In 1962, the railway received the 4901 to 4950 series cars from National Steel Car. They had riveted sides, NSC-3 ends and roof, and pairs of Youngstown 8-foot sliding and 6-foot plug doors on either side. The interior height was 10'6". Paint schemes on these cars included the original PGE initial scheme, the original and revised MAP Herald schemes, and the BCR dogwood scheme. These cars were used in lumber and veneer service and lasted until 1988. These cars could be modeled in N scale using the Microtrain's PS1 40-foot plug and sliding door car, which has the correct ends, roof, and doors. In 1969, the Pacific Great Eastern acquired a quantity of mini-box cars from CP Rail. They were intended to replace the various wooden cars in outfit service, but as the maintenance of way department could not absorb them quickly enough, some went into revenue service to ease a car shortage. Eventually, they all went into work service, undergoing many different conversions for various roles, and were painted MOW yellow. The mini-box cars were built in 1929 by 3 builders, National Steel Car, Canadian Car and Foundry, and the Eastern Car Company. This resulted in some construction differences, especially on the ends. The cars were of all-steel riveted construction with Murphy radial roofs and Youngstown 5-foot sliding doors. The interior height on these cars was 8'7". The cars in revenue service were renumbered PGE 3001 to 3050, and they were painted in the freight car red with minimal stenciling, although at least 1 or 2 cars received a MAP logogram. They appear to have been used in grain service until 1974. Briggs Models offered a cast resin and etched metal kit for these cars in N scale. In HO scale, Trueline Trains released a plastic version, including a ready-to-run version in the BCR's Maintenance of Way scheme. Some of the mini-box cars entered work service as tool cars, and they were virtually unaltered in this role. They were painted Maintenance of Way yellow with black stenciling. I modeled 2 of these cars, 993020 and 993024, which are now in the museum at Squamish. They are built from the Briggs kit and finished with acrylic paints and the decals that were supplied with the kit. By the 1970s, the railway was short of boxcars for grain service and sought to acquire second-hand cars from other railways. The BCIT 3045 to 3099 series was acquired from the Bangor and Aroostook in 1974. Built by American Car and Foundry in 1954, they had riveted sides, 431 improved dreadnought ends, and rectangular panel roofs, and they had 8-foot Youngstown sliding doors. Following their acquisition, these cars received a coat of primer and minimal stenciling. They received BCIT reporting marks, and they were renumbered in the 3045 to 3099 series for international grain service to the United States. Many of these cars were converted for work service, and the last cars were withdrawn from revenue service in 1996. These photographs show how I built 2 of these cars in N scale, and a similar method could be used in HO scale. I started with the Intermountain AAR modified car and added custom printed 431 ends, as the kits come with 44 ends. I substituted 8-foot corrugated doors from Caslow Shop's boxcar kits. I removed the running boards and filled the holes in the roofs, and I cut down the AR corner ladders. And the cars were finished with acrylic paints and custom decals. And these are my finished models of BCIT 3055 and 3070. If you look carefully, you might be able to see our attempt to represent the areas where the primer coat was applied and where it wasn't. Also in 1974, the railway acquired a large number of cars from the Central of New Jersey Railroad. Initially, the cars were leased, and later some were purchased. These were 12-panel cars with an inside height of 10 feet, improved dreadnought ends, and diagonal panel roofs. The 7-foot doors were either Youngstown sliding or superior panel type. These cars were built originally in 1953 by American Car and Foundry. Initially, they were only re-stenciled into the BCIT series, with most heralds painted out, and the road numbers were 20500 to 24499. The cars purchased were repainted into the BCR's light green scheme with dogwood herald and renumbered into the BCOL 3100 to 3199 and 3200 to 3210 series. Many were converted for work service, including the well-known material reclaim car in black and white, and also the Cat Dozer cars. The last cars were withdrawn from service in 1994. I'm not aware of a way to model these cars at present. Intermountain offered a 12-panel car in N scale, but it had a 10'6" inside height rather than 10'0", and it has the wrong roof. So at the moment, these cars are a challenge to make in N scale. The third series of 40-foot boxcars acquired during the 1970s was the BCIT 803-500 to 803-649 series, which were distinguished by their dark green paint scheme and unique typeface for the reporting marks. Originally built by Pullman Standard in 1956 for the Sioux line, these cars had Pullman Standard ends and roof and 7-foot doors. They were rebuilt by the United States Railway Manufacturing Company with reinforced side sills, door gussets, and 8-foot superior panel sliding doors. The running boards were removed, and the brakes, draft gear, and trucks were reconditioned. They were painted dark green with white stenciling, but no logogram. They were renumbered in the new series for international service, and they were leased from USEX, and they lasted until 1980. I built these cars using the new Atlas PS1 model. I used stripped styrene to add the reinforced side sills and door gussets, and I used the 8-foot panel doors supplied with the kits. I should mention that these kits actually come with a lot of detail parts and various options. It's a really nice kit. The models were finished with acrylic paints and custom decals. And here are my completed models of 803-539 and 803-610. A similar conversion in HO scale should be possible using a PS1 boxcar. We will end with a few photographs of the 40-foot boxcars in revenue service. In this photograph from 1979, we can see a long string of 40-foot boxcars being switched in and out of the grain elevators in Fort St. John. These cars would travel down to North Vancouver and then on to markets in the Fraser Valley and also over to Vancouver Island. And in similar scenes at Dawson Creek, we see PGE 40-foot boxcars also in grain service. The car at the Alberta Wheat Pool elevator in the lower photograph shows the wooden grain door in the doorway, which were installed when filling the cars with grain. In addition to the grain elevators at Dawson Creek and Fort St. John, there were several elevators at Taylor, one at Tremblay on the Dawson Creek subdivision, and one at Buick on the Fort Nelson subdivision. This 1980 photograph shows 3 40-foot boxcars in grain service traveling south, almost certainly in a southbound Peace Vancouver through freight. Also visible, ahead of the mid-train locomotives, is one of the railway's 2 unique hopper boxcars, also in grain service. So even if you model the main line rather than the north end, you can still run 40-foot boxcars in your trains during this era. And there you have my efforts to model the railway's 40-foot boxcars in N scale. One thing to keep in mind with these particular cars is that they represent a smaller portion of the overall freight car fleet when seen on the main line between North Vancouver and Prince George. They're in transit from the Peace region down to North Vancouver. But if you're modeling the north end, with all of the grain elevators at Dawson Creek and Fort St. John and Taylor, then these cars would be seen more often. So for a layout depicting the north end, I think they would represent a higher overall portion of the car fleet. I would like to thank the individuals who have made their prototype photographs available for inclusion in this presentation, and also my friends Jeff Briggs and Philippe White for their assistance with finishing my models. Thank you for watching, and I hope to be back with another equipment video soon. Until then, peace be with you.